Our next session is Weaponising the Law, the Authoritarian Playbook in Action. Please welcome our speaker to the stage.
Since 2022, the Thomson Reuters Foundation has been supporting newsrooms forced to flee their home countries. We have helped them set up in new places, helped them to navigate a new legal landscape. And through this work, it was obvious that there was a reason above all else forcing these journalists into exile, one that many in this room will be all too familiar with.
Foreign media now has to brand their Russian language news as the work of foreign agents.
Georgians have continued to vent their anger on the streets, demonstrating against the controversial Foreign Agents Bill.
Bukele then announced in a lengthy post that he would send to the legislature, which he controls, a foreign agents law.
Today, the spotlight is on the Foreign Contribution Regulation Amendment Act.
El proceso de consulta de la iniciativa de ley de regulación de agentes extranjeros.
This year, we have been devastated to see some of those same newsrooms that we first supported in 2022 are now being forced to flee once more as foreign agent laws spread. Journalists are quite literally being chased across borders, hounded and harassed from one country to the next by these laws, and they are leaving behind family, friends, and careers in the process. We mapped this trend in our 2023 Weaponising the Law report. At the time, there were a handful of adopters: Russia, Belarus, Nicaragua, Hungary, Israel, India. But over the last year, there's been a dramatic escalation. Kyrgyzstan, Georgia, Venezuela, El Salvador, Bulgaria, Turkey, Paraguay, Slovakia, Serbia. All have either adopted their version of a foreign agent law or tabled draft bills. To grasp what's happening here, we need to step back in time and delve deeper. What are foreign agent laws? Where did they come from? And what impact are they having now? Because they did not spring out of nowhere in 2022. They stem from seemingly benign principles of international law aimed at combating malign interference from foreign powers. Over time, however, these laws have become warped to become a chilling tool in an authoritarian playbook. For the origins, we have to look back to the years leading to World War II. In the 1930s, investigations by the US Congress and law enforcement uncovered a web of Nazi-funded proxies, paid agents, and undisclosed media campaigns that were designed to spread anti-Semitic and undemocratic propaganda. In response, the US drafted and adopted one of the first and most comprehensive pieces of legislation designed to defend against foreign interference, the Foreign Agents Registration Act. The law required that anyone in the US who was acting as an agent of a foreign principal register with the government and disclose their activities, finances, and relationship to that foreign power. Several Nazi-aligned organizations failed to register, and this led to their successful prosecution. But after the war, the law was largely lay dormant. It was deemed an exceptional measure for exceptional times. There were, however, other countries whose fears of foreign influence prompted similar action. Notably, India in 1976. In the prior year, the government of Indira Gandhi declared a national emergency in response to civil unrest that erupted after Prime Minister Gandhi was found guilty of electoral corruption. The declaration granted sweeping powers to suspend civil liberties, censor the press, and arrest opposition leaders without trial. The declaration was justified on mostly unfounded allegations that foreign powers were channeling funds to groups to destabilize the country. And as a result, the government adopted the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. The law required that anyone receiving money or gifts from foreign sources register and report how those funds were used. Organizations or individuals of a political nature, as defined by the government, were prohibited from accepting foreign funds. While the law helped to create a climate of fear, it was again not widely enforced, but it left an ominous legacy. Whether intentional or not, the FCRA was incredibly vague. Key terms like political nature and foreign contribution were ill-defined, leaving the door open for selective enforcement and misinterpretation. Jump to 2010 and we see a disturbing trend emerging in the country. An amendment to the FCRA is introduced mandating stricter financial reporting and registration requirements. Suddenly, like dominoes, NGOs operating in India begin to report their FCRA registrations being suspended, cancelled, or applications denied. Greenpeace, Lawyers Collective, People's Watch, Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, Oxfam, Save the Children, to name a few. The latest figures suggest that more than 12,000 NGOs operating in India have had their FCRA licenses revoked. In almost all cases, the justification was the same. These NGOs are utilizing foreign funds to achieve objectives that are political or adverse to national economic interests. Let's hear from one organization that was on the sharp end of this law, People's Watch, an NGO that does important work to monitor and document human rights abuses.
Well, till the year 2012, we were a very positive organization with the FCRA regime, if I could call it so, which meaning that our returns were filed in order, we never had questions from the ministry, we had no problems at all till 2012. And all of a sudden in the year 2012, we are visited twice by the ministry officials who come and officially try to search our premises, looking at our accounts, giving us notice. All this was on notice. And then they took a lot of documents with them as a result of their visits. The first visit was 3 days. The second visit was another week. And as a result of this, in the year 2012, in July, we sustained 3 different suspensions, each consecutively, each of 180 days. And a suspension means it's a suspension of our bank account to receive foreign remittances. This is what it has meant. It has broken us completely. We had a staff of almost 300 staff across the country at one point of time working on a variety of subjects. Whole batch of staff had to leave us. Many of them have started their own organizations. People have left for other professions. Many people have joined, government service. Some have gone into practice. But we have lost all our staff. We have a handful of 24 staff at the moment who are holding on to us for the passion that People's Watch has created within them and we have created with them. And thanks to them, efforts continue.
This was not happening in a vacuum. Just 2 years later and 3,000 miles away, we see similar trends. Vladimir Putin's return as Russian president is met with mass protests. And in the aftermath, the Kremlin adopts a new law. Its name echoes that landmark US legislation from 1938, the Foreign Agent Law. But that's where the similarities end. This is by far the most punitive law to combat foreign interference in history. It says that a foreign agent is any individual or organization that receives foreign funding and engages in political activities. Yet the definitions are extremely broad and vague. Political activities encompass anything that could influence public opinion, from hosting educational events to printing opinion polls. Once designated, NGOs must register with the Justice Ministry, submit regular reports on their activities, finances, and interactions. And if the Kremlin does not approve of the activities reported, their assets can be frozen, bank accounts closed, and donations or grants that once kept them afloat cut off. Failure to comply is met with stringent fines and even prison sentences. As in India, Russian NGOs, increasingly targeted and cut off from international funding, start to shut their doors in droves. World Wildlife Fund, Greenpeace, Memorial, Agora International Human Rights Group, Golos, Team 29, and many, many others. By the end of 2016, 148 organizations had already been designated as foreign agents, and 27 had closed down altogether. But here is a critical point to note. Up until now, predominantly NGOs and human rights defenders have suffered the brunt of the law. That changes in 2017 and 2019 when Russia amended the scope of the law, first to include media outlets and then individual journalists. In 2022, after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the law was further amended and widened again. so that effectively anyone under foreign influence or receiving loosely defined support from abroad could be designated as a foreign agent. And it is now that we see the mass exodus of independent media from Russia that I mentioned at the start of the spotlight. It is this that brings foreign agent laws to global public attention. Since 2022, the Committee to Protect Journalists reports that at least 304 journalists and media outlets have been branded as foreign agents by Russian authorities. The sheer scale of the legal penalties and crippling stigma has forced many of them into exile. But even in exile, they cannot escape the label. By law, they're required to include a disclaimer on all publications, even a personal Facebook post or retweet. This deters audiences back home from reading their reporting, afraid of state surveillance through association. The extent of the social stigma is such that family and friends back home are ostracized. Take just one case of Olga Ivshina, a senior correspondent for the BBC's World Service who was designated as a foreign agent in January of this year. Within an hour of the designation, her father, a university professor in Russia, had his name plastered over local media. By the next day, his neighbors had stopped greeting him in the morning, friends have stopped speaking to her, all fearing retribution from the state. In our next panel, we will hear more firsthand testimony of how these laws are not only a threat to civic space, but are also tearing friends and families apart. And the picture continues to evolve. Just last week, Putin signed a bill into law that will make it easier for law enforcement to bring criminal charges against foreign agents. One single violation will be enough to lead to prosecution. When you pull back the lens on over 90 years of these foreign agent laws, a clearer picture starts to emerge as to why they're spreading like wildfire across much of the authoritarian world. These laws are not inherently corrupt. As we saw in the US in the 1930s and in many contexts today, coercive foreign interference can wreak havoc on elections, public opinion, and government policy. Under international law, countries do have rights to protect themselves against such interventions. However, the effectiveness of these laws in democratic contexts is not at all clear and increasingly in question. And meanwhile, what is clear is there is a playbook being passed amongst autocratic states, one in which these justifications are being invoked and abused to stifle dissent. The small print of these laws may vary, but the core tenets remain the same. Vague definitions. Terms like foreign influence or political activity go undefined, leaving for misinterpretation and selective enforcement. Onerous requirements that bury organizations in paperwork. This often includes forensic line-by-line bookkeeping on their income and expenditure, and legal penalties for failure to comply, such as fines, criminal charges, and increasingly prison sentences. And finally, social stigma that brands critics of the government as unpatriotic outsiders. One of the key takeaways I'd like to hammer home is that this playbook targets independent media and NGOs in equal measure, and increasingly ordinary citizens as well. Media and NGOs are on the front lines of holding governments accountable. Both are core pillars of healthy civil societies and democracies, and this is precisely why they're being targeted. If countries lose those voices, whether through imprisonment, exile, or bankruptcy, it leaves the door open for autocratic leaders to continue to curtail freedoms unopposed. In responding to this threat, we need to see the legal community, business, governments working more closely together with frontline groups. All have a role to play. And there is some evidence that domestic opposition and international pressure together can be effective in pushing back. In Hungary, for example, the government backtracked on adopting its foreign agent law for now after facing intense pressure from civil society and international actors. Nevertheless, there's a very real risk that this bill could be reintroduced in the future. Next year, the Foundation will be publishing a mapping and analysis of how this new authoritarian playbook fits within the broader context of legal threats that are threatening civic space. You can scan the code here, if you would like to receive it. And now I'm very pleased to say that we're going to hear from a great panel of experts who are going to share more insights into the lived reality of these laws and the work that is happening at all levels to fight back against them. Thank Thank you.